Okay, it should be good. So, anyway, how's Melee been this week?
Pretty good. Just has been two weeklies, one on Tuesday and one on Wednesday that I got to play. I also have been practicing by myself, like a fair amount.
Uh huh.
Mostly just like practicing, like beating up various CPU characters and like moving around the stage and executing stuff like that.
Makes sense.
Just trying to keep like my muscle memory and all that stuff in good form.
Typical stuff. That's good.
Yeah. So I guess the weeklies on Tuesday there weren't really any big heavy hitters. There was like ninth and 10th on our PR, and like nobody took any games for me. I decided to play Marth the whole bracket and like
Cool.
sort of treat it like tournament.
I think that's good. Definitely.
Yeah. I think there was like a game or two where I was taken to last stock, and I sort of tried to use those sort of opportunities to be like, okay, like let's treat this like as if it's like a high stakes match, and be like,
How do you feel about that?
um, it felt like I could definitely feel the pressure a bit more when that was like really like, oh, I could actually lose the game here.
Uh huh.
Um, but it wasn't like anything too overwhelming. I guess like partly the fact that it was such a low like pressure situation compared to if it was like I'm in losers bracket on
Yeah.
my last game of like a monthly with hundreds of dollars on the line versus like this weekly where like people are barely kind of being able to take or like meet a last stock. So I don't know. I guess one thing I was wondering is like, do is it like a common thing like would you recommend something like playing a match and saying like, okay, let's try to like win this match and like you know like have at least two stocks left at the end of it or something like that, and like
Mm,
give yourself.
you could try that if you feel like it would help. I think that going back to what you said about like you put pressure on yourself and you felt it, but it wasn't quite the same. I think that's actually
Yeah.
good because, like, I was actually talking about this with Shabo the other day about mentality, and I was talking about how like people don't really view mentality as like a practicable thing. They kind of view it as like an on or off switch. But like
I
I
see.
think it's ideal that like you felt a smaller amount of pressure because like that allows you to handle it and it allows you to build confidence by winning under those conditions, and that can help you, work towards it in harder scenarios.
Hmm.
So I actually think
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
very good that like it wasn't. That's the whole thing I think I was trying to get you to do, which is like it's actually very important to practice it in those easier environments because that's how good
Hmm.
players build like build their confidence, get used to those like high pressure environments, etc. So does that kind of make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense to me.
So I think that's actually good. But in terms of
Okay.
the your idea, I mean, I think that's a fine idea. I can't say for sure that it'll help you, but I can say that like working on like how you feel about things is definitely requires some experimentation to see like what like vibes with you and what makes you like feel the improvement. So I think that's not a bad idea. But
Okay.
I do think it's kind of like I mean, it just depends how seriously you can take it. Because, if you get down to two stocks, in the back of your mind, you get there and you're like, shit. Oh, well, I guess I can just win the match now.
Yeah, that's true.
So it really is all about, like, I think how you visualize it and the emotions you kind of connect with. And I think you can do that playing a normal match without thinking about that at all. And I think if thinking about keeping two stocks or more helps you do that, then that's great. But ultimately, it's all about how you make yourself feel and how you recall how it feels to play in those environments.
Yeah. Okay. I think yeah. I'll do some experimentation next time I get to play and see what works
Mm-hmm.
best.
Cool.
Um, I guess yeah. The other last thing was that there was the weekly on Wednesday, which had let me think. I think I had a few like better people there. I know for like the only person who really like was like a big threat was like Strike, who's like number two in our PR, and he's like one of the two Falco mains
Falcos.
who are like top three I've talked about. But
Mm-hmm.
he didn't like he played Fox in bracket,
Oh, okay.
and yeah, like I don't yeah. So it was like in winners. it was like I was kind of on the verge of 3-0ing him, and then like he got like a janky like like down throw kill on like the edge of the stadium.
That's funny.
Yeah, and it was like last stock, so then I just kind of salty ran it back, and then like he ended up winning that game. So then I just took him to FD, and it was like a 3 stock or something.
Yeah.
And then winners, it was like it was in brands it was a 3-0.
Okay.
So it wasn't like yeah. I guess yeah, the highest pressure I felt was if it would have been in winners bracket of that.
And how do you feel about that?
Well, to be honest, like when I went, I don't know, it was kind of like going into it. I was like, okay, it's his Fox. Like, I know, like like he has a good Fox secondary, so I should respect it. But I'm not like, I was feeling pretty confident, I guess, that I could win just because it's like I know he doesn't have nearly as much experience in the matchup as I do. It's just early in.
I think that you should take what you just said and strive to feel like that about all your matches, which is. I need to respect my opponent, but I have no doubt that I can win. I think that's like roughly how I feel going into all my matches at a top level. I'm like, yep, I've felt that way probably every match I've ever played. Is like I don't come in with expectations about my opponent's skill. I plan on giving them respect, but also I have nothing but confidence that I will be able to beat them.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Because I just thought like the way you described it was like perfect. I'm like, the way you felt versus Fox is hopefully how you feel about all your sets. And it's easier to feel that way when you have, factual evidence supporting it. But also like, I don't think you have to lie to yourself, because I think there should be things that you can realistically be confident about versus any opponent,
Right.
I actually had a question about that set. So the first set went 3-2, even though you never probably felt like you were going to lose, right?
Yes, yeah, that's what I was gonna.
What if it went 2-2 and you still felt like, okay, whatever, I'll just go FD. Do you remember who took the first stock on FD?
I'm pretty sure it was me.
What if he took the first stock?
If he took the first stock?
Yeah. Think about how you would feel. Talk to me about that. Because, it's 2-2. You're like, oh, whatever, I got janked a game, I'll just run it back. And you lose, and you're like, okay, fine, I'll just go FD and I'll just win. And then he takes the first stock. Then what?
Yeah, so at that point, like, I think I've had a sort of similar situation where, actually, it was sort of the opposite. It was like the last time I went to BC, I played against SB, who's like number 3 in that province, and I went up 2-0 against him, and I actually didn't even know he was PR ranked there. I just like thought it was some Fox kind of thing. Yeah. And so I was like winning, and then it was game 3. I think it was, he took me to Stadium. No, sorry. It was Dreamland, and I like narrowly lost, and then I just like decided to take him to FD. But my execution was really off, so I lost that stage, and then I took him to Stadium because I just like kind of wanted like the similar to FD but with like easier platform combos. And then like I ended up losing. Like he took the first stock, and then I kind of felt the pressure. So like when you said that scenario, that's what it reminded me of, like how I felt then, and it was sort of like this kind of like, oh shoot, I could actually lose now. Like now I'm actually at a disadvantage to win the set, and I had this like almost 3-0 situation. So it started to like make me feel a bit like I don't know if like anxious is the word, but sort of like I felt some sort of pressure there that I was like. Like, oh, like I was blowing this set that I totally could have had, 2 games ago.
Yep.
So but ideally I would, in like the situation, like if that were to happen against Strike, I would probably just like take a moment on the spawn platform and like, take a deep breath or two and just kind of like, okay, let's play this really serious, number one, like priority, it's FD, trying to get a grab and like convert it into a stock and like, do your best to not get like cheesed in any way, like shine gimped or anything like that. That'd probably be what I tell myself when I'm on the spawn platform.
Okay, so let's talk about that. I actually think the difference between how I view it and how you view it is that I think what you need to do to fix that starts way before that.
Okay.
So you kind of started talking from where the problem occurred, but when I approach it, I would think about it before the problem even occurred. So if I'm playing, this guy in tournament, and regardless of who they are, I feel like maybe they're not that good. I will still try to remind myself to stay focused, not get overconfident, but still be confident. stuff like that. Because,
Hmm.
what you're describing, even though it was a player that was unknown to you, that's happened to me and probably other top players versus other top players all the time. Like,
Right.
I have played literal top players, like, who I know are supposed to be good, and three stock them the first two games and been like, this guy's not that good. And I'm not
Right.
the only one who's done that. I'm sure, for example, when PP played Ryan Ford, have you seen that set? Where,
Yes.
yeah, the game one is literally a minute long, right?
Yeah.
And that's because PP is that much better. But at the same time, one of the beautiful and also ridiculous and awful things about Melee is that, like, skill level does not always directly correlate to who wins the match. And at the end of the day, anyone actually can beat anyone, if the right things happen, right? Because there's so
Yeah.
many ways to make mistakes. There's so many ways for something to go wrong, right? And
Yeah.
I can easily envision a world where, like, how do I put it? It's like, Ryan Ford gets destroyed game one, and even though PP's so much better, I'm pretty sure game two, Ryan did way better. Even though I didn't really feel like he played much smarter, it's just PP didn't quite get the same outplays. There was a little bit more jank. A couple of things weren't as clean, and then suddenly the match is a lot closer.
Yeah. Well,
And-
sometimes it. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say that actually reminded me of like what actually happened in the set where Kirby Kaze almost JV5'd Kalamazoo game one.
Yeah.
Kalamazoo took game two. I'm pretty sure on Zoom.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
and I think
yeah.
it's a huge reflection that, like, I think if Kirby Kaze was able to JV5 him, almost, that doesn't mean that game two he can do it again, but I do think if he takes the most important traits he abused in game one and doesn't make any mistakes and only engages in very clean interactions game two, he can probably reproduce something similar. But I think that's not very easy to do. And sometimes, like, people just play really dumb for no reason or aren't aware of things. And even if they didn't adapt per se, like, I hate when people say, oh, Ryan Ford, for example, Ryan Ford must have adapted from game one to game two. Honestly, it's just like the situations that were created were totally different.
Yeah.
I won't call it RNG because it's not literally random, but honestly, like, Melee sometimes is not so different from like some sort of procedurally generated content game where, like, the situations that arise are sometimes like pseudo random. Do you kind of get what I mean?
Yeah, I do get what you mean. I mean, I could think of it as almost like getting like a good RNG seed in like a run or something. Like,
Yeah,
sometimes
that's kind of how
things.
I feel about it. Like,
Yeah.
when you, like, destroy a player really badly, a lot of the times it's like getting a good RNG seed. Where
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like,
that makes sense.
Even though you're forcing, and the only way that wouldn't be true is if you're explicitly employing a certain strategy and not departing from it, and the opponent doesn't know how to beat it. But realistically,
Right.
at top level, most players don't play like, this is my one strategy. It's a lot more dynamic than that, right?
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
why maybe in a game that's less dynamic, that would be reproducible. So I think that these are all things you really want to think about when playing. And
Okay.
you should be confident, but that confidence shouldn't, like, when I sit down to play someone, I'm confident anyway. And if somehow I'm, beating them and then suddenly something goes wrong, my confidence isn't necessarily shaken if I truly am confident for the right reasons. But if I'm only confident and then I just use, like, the match result as, like, to confirm my confidence, then that also means that if the match starts going in different ways, that can sway my confidence. And I think that's not necessarily good. So I think believing in something, like, kind of not results-based will be helpful in maintaining confidence. Does that make sense?
Okay, yeah. So, like, to recap, like, you sort of, like, don't measure your confidence by, like, the game results, but more by, like, more consistent factors, I guess.
Which could be, prior training, how you feel about your gameplay, like for example, if you're playing well and you three stock someone game one, and then you somehow lose game two, if you can look back and still feel like that doesn't mean like, oh, I played like garbage. It's like, okay, like, you didn't become a different player from game one to game two. You might have made a couple worse decisions, but overall it's like, I should still be confident. I probably made some mistakes that, I'm hopefully aware of. And then I can move into game 3 kind of with, like, ready to perform at the same level I did initially and just, like, make sure I don't make some mistakes, stuff like that, right? But what I was really going to say, and I got on so many tangents, what I really wanted to say is the spot you should address the problem is after winning game 1, stop and make sure you have a good mindset. After winning game 2, stop and make sure you have a good mindset. And then when game 3 starts going poorly, you have to not worry about it. As opposed to waiting until you lose game 3 and then trying to, like, fix your mentality in the moment. Like, people love saying, take a deep breath on the respawn, which is great. But it's like, you can't wait until you're on your last legs before trying to, like, mount this comeback. You need to have yourself ready in the first place, right?
Yeah, that does make sense.
It's kind of the thing where, when Armada goes down 0-2 versus S2J and then is still fighting tooth and nail, for the entire set at every point, it's like he was ready. He was not, what's the word? I can't think of the word, but essentially he wasn't, like, swayed or disillusioned or discouraged by, like, losing game 1. He still came back game 2 ready to play. And even though that's different than the scenario where, you win and then you lose, it's still very similar at the end of the day, where I feel like it's all about, like, the result doesn't dictate anything, really,
Yeah, that makes sense.
I actually have a set of my personal experience that I can reference, and then we can move on. I actually played Dreffen at a tournament, and I'm pretty good versus Sheik as Fox, as I would imagine that you and many other people know. And Dreffen's not, like, a player I'm really worried about, and also his playstyle is pretty easy for me to beat. And I sit down, and I'm actually going to scroll through this set real quick because I'm curious. And, the set starts off. Winners finals, very predictably. I take 2 stocks without losing one, right? I'm scrolling through the game right now. I'm up 3 stocks to 1. I'm beating him up. Maybe I make a slight mistake at the ledge, but I still, like, 2 stock him for free, almost 3 stock him, right?
Okay.
And then game 2, it's honestly kind of going similarly in terms of interactions from what I recall. But, I make some mistakes, and he's up 4 stocks to 2. And in my head, it's like, man, I know that shouldn't be happening, right? And then I end up, like, losing that game pretty solidly, as badly as he beat me, even though I still felt like I understood what he was doing, but for whatever reason it went wrong. So, game 3, I go FD. Again, I'm up 4 stocks to 2. I'm, like, 3 stocking him for free, and I end up, like, 3 stocking him with 27 damage in under 2 minutes. And then I'm like, okay, easy. Everything I did was still the right strategy, and that kind of affirmed it for me. Maybe I made some mistakes game 2. Maybe I tried to interact in some janky scenarios, but I, kept the same game plan. I understood what I was doing. Maybe adjusted some errors, 3 stocked him, right?
Right.
You go to game 4, again, I actually have a lead this time, and then suddenly I'm skipping through the game starts slipping from me, and again, I'm getting 3 stocked. And it's probably because, again, I'm making mistakes, taking dumb risks. And in my mind, I remember being like, why am I letting this slip away? But I remember not feeling worried because I was like, whatever, I'll just win if I need to kind of feeling. Does that make sense? It was like real confidence.
Yeah.
But you know what happens game 5, funnily enough? If I recall correctly, and I'm skipping through it now, he actually goes up 4 stocks to 2 in game 5. After, like, literally the games I won, I 3 stocked him in under 2 minutes type of thing. And the games I lost were just me messing up. And then suddenly game 5 happens. I'm down 4 stocks to 2. And what ends up happening is I pretty much win the match on that second stock, taking only 50 damage.
Huh.
Which I think is kind of cool to think about, right? And I'm looking at the match and I end up 2-stocking him with 52 damage, even though I was down 4 stocks to 2. And it's like, how do you think, I was able to, like, game 5, you're down 4 stocks to 2 after knowing you're quote-unquote supposed to be beating this person. But, like, I was able to maintain mental clarity, I guess, because at no point was I truly worried. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I can sort of relate it to, like, when you said, like, whatever, I'll just win. That was kind of my, like, how I, like, felt when I was playing against Strike, and it was like, okay, I ran it back to Stadium and I lost, but, like, I still just have FD.
You weren't
and I was
worried,
like,
right? But then that's why I brought up, what if game 5 you lose the first stock? What if you lose the second stock, At what point does, your mentality crumble? And I think it really comes down to, like, the work needs to be done beforehand. You need to be confident for the right reasons. As
Yeah.
the set goes on, you need to check how you're feeling, think about possibilities. You might not need to overthink it or something. You might be able to be like, okay, you don't have to sit there thinking and analyzing, oh, what if this goes wrong? What if that goes wrong? But you can be like, okay, feeling pretty good. I recognize that it may not continue to go this well, but I think it should, and I'm going to maintain, a good attitude and feel good about it, and then just go into it feeling good. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah. That does make sense.
Yep.
I think, the way you explained it, like, I think it's sensible to, a lot more sensible to think about these kinds of things before they're like an immediate. Before right.
And I mean, I know we kind of talked about it a ton, but I really wanted to paint this total image in your mind, which is why I scrolled through the set and I talked through all the possibilities, because I really want you. These are things I think that if you've thought about ahead of time are so much easier to deal with. If you've thought about all the possible ways the tournament set can go, it's more comfortable, Very similarly, I remember I was talking to someone who used to help me a lot with Melee, Umbreon Mao, and one thing he always said is don't stage strike on the fly. Already understand your stage strikes, and even though it's not mentality explicitly, it's very similar in feel where the more you've thought about ahead of time, the less you have to think about in the moment, or the easier it is to reference your emotions, right?
Yeah.
And it's you don't want to have to do the hard work once you show up, but
Yeah. That sounds reasonable to me.
Cool. So, between that and then I think going back to what we talked about initially about using the kind of pressure of being last stock versus a not so good player, that's an actual really good way to build mentality. You shouldn't be man, I wish it was more pressure. I think that's great. And then I think taking, the fact that you beat this player game 5 even though you technically could have lost, and using that to build your confidence and assure yourself is really helpful for the future. Every set you play, everything you think about can be a step towards becoming a more confident, prepared player.
Yeah, I'm seeing that. Yeah, how that works.
Yeah, cool. Okay.
Yeah, I'll try and keep that in mind, in future tournament sets. Think about how this could be applied to a real what can I learn from this, take away from it and apply it to a real tournament situation.
Okay, cool. Well, what type of let's talk about some Melee, not some mentality stuff. What do you want to talk about? Do you have any VODs that you would like to watch?
So I don't have any new VODs since the last time we talked, but I still have a few. There's let's see, there's the rest of that versus Falco VOD I had. There is one versus a Falcon, one versus Marth, and one versus Ices, and they're all pretty high level, at least
Yeah, and we haven't watched any of those besides the Falcon one. Let's watch Marth or Ices. I haven't really seen you fight those characters.
Okay, I think I'd like to review the Marth one this time at least, because this seems like it would be more relevant to stuff I can apply, because there's more Marths around here than there are Ices. There's pretty much none.
Okay, give me 1 second, because I think this lesson has ended up being kind of segmented, where we clearly talked about one topic for the first half. So I want to stop the recording now, and then I'll just start the recording again for the actual Melee analysis. That way, if you or other people want to watch, it's clear what the difference is.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Okay, 1 second.